It's just a half-hour countdown to Countdown. Best Channel 4 leafs through the food file.
This week, I'll be pulling the cork on a common wine complaint. In Mouthpiece, a big issue, royal support for the food industry's scheme to feed the homeless.
Is it, in fact, just another load of old cobblers that lets society and the government off the hook?
And our scientific cook studies the secrets of smooth sauces. But first...
Salam, I'm Bethlehem Johannes. I'm from Ethiopia and I'm going to make you a doro wat.
This week, I'm gate-crashing a dinner in Middlesex where my hostess has invited family and friends to join her in a meal which is always cooked on special occasions in Ethiopia. It's a spicy chicken stew which is served on what looks like an edible tablecloth. Well, earlier today, Bethlehem and I went shopping for some of the ingredients.
Okay, I'm gonna need some gingers and I'm gonna need some garlics. Let me choose the good ones.
To go in the doro wat?
Yeah.
Now, when would you eat it in Ethiopia?
The doro wat?
Yeah.
Oh, we have the doro wat in special occasions, engagements, or special parties. A party is not a party without a doro wat.
I don't actually know what half the things are in here.
Well, I'll show it to you, don't worry. Oh, look. This is what I'm looking for. Berbere.
What exactly is it?
Oh, it's a very hot powder made from different spices. More than 10 spices in it. It's nice and hot. And the basic ingredient for most Ethiopian dishes.
In Ethiopia, we say that if a woman cannot prepare doro wat, she will never get a husband. When I was a child in Ethiopia, my mother would make me practice every Easter. She would buy 2 chickens, one for me and one for her. By working together, she taught me how to prepare a wonderful doro wat. I portion the chicken into 12 pieces. I wash it, skin it and take all the fat away. So I use pure chicken meat. We fry the onions without any oil. We dry fry them, so I think it's quite a healthy dish. People in Britain don't know anything about Ethiopia. When you mention Ethiopia, all they think of is farming. It's true, there are some people starving, but it's a wonderful country with a rich and ancient culture. And in my opinion, it's the best food in the world.
Okay, everybody. Here's the big meal. Are you happy?
Very happy. Now I've seen this. Bethlehem always serves her doro wat with injera, a pancake-like bread that is served with every meal in Ethiopia. It looks absolutely amazing, but how on earth are we going to eat it?
I'll show it to you, don't worry. In Ethiopia, we use the best cutlery, which is our hands. So you take a piece of injera, okay?
Okay, please.
Bit
Have I got a big enough piece?
Yes, that's big enough. You put it on top of the wort.
Yeah.
And just bring some up. Fold it up again.
I'm not allowed to
Make it nice and neat for your mouth.
Okay.
Here you go. Lovely.
It's quite hot, isn't it? Lovely. Well, look, tell me a bit about this bread. How do you make it?
We make this injera from a grain called teff. And we make a dough and then we ferment it for 2-4 days.
Is that sort of lemony flavour because it's been fermented then?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Because I wasn't expecting that flavour at all. It's lovely.
It goes very well with the sauce. It's nice. And
Yeah, it acts as a
nice.
plate, so there's no washing up.
No washing up, yes.
Brilliant, isn't it? It's wonderful. And Ethiopian table manners include being fed by your neighbours if you seem to be holding back.
Lovely. How about that?
It tastes better when you do it.
I'm manning you now.
I'm here in Manchester to look at Provision, the latest attempt to feed homeless and needy people. This time put together by the food industry itself. From this warehouse behind us, surplus stock is brought together and distributed by local charities. But what I'd like to know is it in fact just another load of old cobblers that lets society and the government off the hook?
It's not only the food industry that's involved, even royalty is getting in on the act.
I am enormously grateful to those people who've made this warehouse available and somehow shifted everything around. By the looks of it, vast quantities of mayonnaise seems to be made.
Prince Charles opened the second Provision warehouse in Bristol last December. It all started, however, here in Manchester. How does it work?
Provision operates by the food industry making products available for distribution to registered charities. Yes, got a good selection for you today. We've got soup, tea, various biscuits, wandas. They're products that would not normally be sold through the usual channels of distribution. Perhaps there's some recipe fault or some fault with the labelling, but the products are quite wholesome, and also I must stress that products are within their best before date, within the shelf life.
One of the registered charities receiving these handouts is LifeShare.
Do you want any more chicken? Because we've got loads of it down here. LifeShare is a charity based in Manchester, and I've been operating on the streets of Manchester for the last 10 years. We operate a soup run as our core work. The percentage of food that Provision provides, in the scheme of things as far as we're concerned with our soup, is a very small percentage. Once a month we go and visit them and draw from them things that would bolster our food stocks that we already have. This month, for example, we came away with biscuits that we would use on a certain run that we do in the early evening. But it basically depends on what they have in stock.
The foods that we give out are the foods that are available. I can't put an order in to suppliers. It depends what's available. And it's a whole range of products. It really does vary, but the excitement is that we don't know what we're going to get from one week to the next.
From my own point of view, I would like to see them have their own warehouse filled with more commodities that we can use, and to let it be more available to organisations that could actually tap into it and use the product.
If you can sign there.
Okay, thanks,
LifeShare had a problem in the first place in even getting hold of Provision's phone number, and then it took them a further year to get accepted. However, if there are worries about the practicalities of the scheme, others are more concerned about what's on the menu.
If you're taking the responsibility to give food to homeless people, then they ought to take the responsibility to make sure that they're doing something to combat the malnutrition that's seen on the streets. There's a lot of diseases that haven't been seen since the 1930s. Homeless people can't choose to have a balanced diet, and so what should be given is not just the things that shops want to get rid of, like say cornflakes or biscuits, but things that will provide what's desperately needed for homeless people.
We're not setting out to provide a full range of products for each of the charities. Unfortunately, we can't do that. In the early days, clearly the product range is fairly narrow. We've had a lot of breakfast cereals, a lot of biscuits, tea, coffee, things like that. But as we extend, we hope that the product range will extend. Ultimately, we believe that we should be able to put together a scheme with 10 distribution centres, one in each of the major conurbations, London, Glasgow, Birmingham, Manchester.
But even if they manage to extend their range of products, there are more complex issues which must be considered when trying to tackle the problems of the homeless.
There are certain problems with the idea of provision. I mean, on the one hand, there's a lot of waste, and it's criminal that the food should be thrown away when people are hungry. The problem with it is that it's a short-term solution, and I think that if anything's going to be done about homelessness, we've got to look for long-term solutions. I wouldn't for 1 minute want to take food out of people's mouths when they're hungry, but on the other hand, I don't want people to feel complacent.
What worries me about programmes like this is it reinforces the idea that somehow homeless people are different from us, that we can somehow give them our cast-offs and give them things we don't need, and basically they will simply survive out there.
I see no danger in the food industry being seen to take on these problems, leaving the government nothing to do. Clearly this, I believe, is a nonsense. The problems are very large, and I don't think government alone can address them.
As far as the food industry is concerned, I mean, the best thing they could do for the whole range of homeless people, not just people on the streets, but people living in bed and breakfast, people living on very low incomes, pensioners, is to make food cheaper. And we have a high-cost food policy in this country, and it impoverishes even further those sections of the population that don't have many resources.
I don't think provision can ever be seen as the major cure-all for the homeless problem, very clearly. All I would say is that I hope we can make some contribution, and that's clearly got to be better than no contribution.
What do the homeless themselves think of the scheme?
They don't give them to charities, like, what are they going to do? Just throw them away?
Because sometimes you need a cup of soup, you know what I mean, when you're freezing to death and you haven't got a blanket. But by the same rule, why should we go through that when you don't need to? All you've got to do is just turn around and say, like, OK, fair enough, here you are, there's a man on the street, let's give him somewhere to go.
It should be the government that does it, because it's the government that put them out in the street by taking their houses away from them.
So there you are. I have mixed opinions. Any scheme which provides food for the homeless must be welcomed, but it may actually exacerbate the problem by making it look like something is actually being done.
I think cheaper food, jobs and housing are the answer, and until we get behind this, then there's going to be hungry people still queuing up on the streets getting handouts.
Coming next, pulling the cork on wine complaints and the scientific cook.
It was then I realised she'd never leave me for another man.
The Corsa GSI is fiendishly hard to steal, but please remember, it's only a car.
Which vitamin will you find in every single tub of Flora?
'Cause if I love you, then I need you. If I need you, then I want you around.
I live with the times, with progress, performance. For my skin, I've discovered continuous hydration with Plenitude Hydro Renewal.
A real breakthrough from L'Oreal. Hydro Renewal first gives an instant surge of moisture and then continuous hydration. Hydro Renewal goes beyond ordinary moisturizers.
With continuous hydration, my skin feels soft, supple, and youthful.
Continuous hydration with Hydro Renewal. Plenitude from L'Oreal challenges the signs of aging.
Vanessa here is making a super evening snack that's perfect if you're feeling peckish. She starts by pouring, no, teasing, the Kellogg's cornflakes into a bowl. Now she's gently bathing them in ice-cold milk, every drop caressing each delicious flake of corn. Absolutely stunning and just great in the evening. Oh. Kellogg's cornflakes. So delicious, so simple, so why wait till breakfast?
Now you can buy now, pay next year at Currys. Buy now, pay next year on selected TVs and videos, camcorders and hi-fi at Currys. And buy now, pay next year on selected laundry, refrigeration, dishwashers and cookers at Currys. Buy now, pay next year. Don't miss it at Currys.
Escape for Men, Calvin Klein.
Sail into the heart of Scandinavia in Scandinavian Seaways Luxury and discover how good the experience can be. In the land of the midnight sun, holiday cottages from £144. The summer high can reach 80 degrees. City breaks are from £132. For an open road to Scandinavia and Germany, take a Scandinavian Seaways motoring holiday. For a brochure, see your travel agent or call 0800 300 900 now.
Cape Golden Delicious. The more delicious golden. Just picked, just perfect. So, just pick Cape.
A rich aroma of stagnant water and rotten leaves, and a fine bouquet of damp undergrowth with just a hint of old cabbage. Well, actually, the wine I'm tasting is absolutely fine, but the smell I've been describing is something known as corkiness. This is when the cork contaminates the wine. It's an ever-growing problem, and one which affects around 3% of wine sold in this country. Put simply, this means that 1 out of every 30 bottles of wine may be undrinkable.
It is a real problem. You can get a cork-tainted wine, whether you pay £2 for a bottle of wine or £20 for a bottle of wine, there's a chance that it will have a cork taint.
Oh, the worst problem we had was a consignment of Australian wine of 2,000 cases, which we had to refuse, because at least half of it was showing corky taint of varying degrees, but a good 50% was not usable, not saleable, so it all had to go back. It's caused mainly by a chemical called trichloroanisole, and that is a reaction between the chlorine that's used to bleach the corks and microbial or mould growth on the corks in the damp conditions. And you get this reaction between the two, which produces this chemical in minute quantities called trichloroanisole. And that's the main cause of corkiness.
If corks are such a problem, why isn't the wine industry doing something about it?
There is no real need for corks, particularly. There's a need for something to stop the wine coming out of the bottle, but it doesn't have to be a cork. Screw cap closures do as good, if not better, job than a cork.
They're not necessary for cheaper wines, wines which are made for quick consumption. Wines which in fact are almost manufactured, they are pasteurized, they are very stable, and they're bottled and put on the market for sale and immediate consumption, or certainly with consumption within a year. So there's no point in putting a cork, there's no benefit at all, because those wines are not going to mature in those bottles.
There are two alternatives to using corks.
One is the plastic closure, which has been commonly available in France, Spain and Italy, which I think anybody who's been into a French supermarket will have seen. They're used really for very, very inexpensive wine, which are consumed immediately after purchase. Then there is the other type of closure, which is known as the ROPP, or the roll-on pilfer-proof, which spirit drinkers will be very familiar with. This is the sort of wine, our $2.99 Côte de Rhône, which would be fine with a plastic closure. The $2.99 Muscadet, plastic stopper would do fine. Nice, soft, fruity Van de Pey, doesn't need a cork. Good value Macon Blanc, fast-moving volume line. Australian Red, $2.99. Same thing applies to Californian, $2.99. I think the savings to the consumer by the use of alternative corks on inexpensive wines, and by inexpensive wines I mean wines retailing at under £3 or £4, might be as much as 20 or 30 pence a bottle.
From a producer's point of view, I'd be more than happy to see all wine in screw cap closures, but there's not many people in the wine business with the money that can go out and promote to educate the consumer of that. You know, it would take a long time to convince people that a screw cap closure is a good thing.
People just like the idea that a bottle of wine should have a cork in it. They like the idea that at a dinner party, even if it's a very inexpensive wine, that somehow to take the capsule off and draw the cork is rather correct. Virile, perhaps. Anyway, something about pulling out a cork. And I think perhaps they're just a little bit shy about putting on the market something with plastic cork. Probably a perfectly good wine, but it gives it a little bit of a cheaper image. I think that's the problem. It's an image problem.
Oak-aged, white Bordeaux, nearly £8 a bottle. I don't think we'd sell a single bottle if it had a plastic stopper. Classic Rioja, a plastic cork just wouldn't do. Louis Latour's Burgundies. I would think it would be over his dead body to ever put a plastic stopper in one of his wines. With Blanc de Blanc, we sell lots of this to wine bars. Difficult one, this. Doesn't need a cork, but would the wine bar customers object to a plastic stopper?
I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have a little bit of mystique. It's like sex. We don't want to take all the fun out of sex or marriage. But I don't know. I think that there's a good reason for a cork, and it has certainly been proven over the centuries, 2 centuries or so.
So what should we do if we find our bottle of wine is corked?
If you do find a bottle of wine that is not right, put the cork back in it and take it back to your retailer as soon as possible. It's not fair to leave it on the kitchen side for a week or so, because it will definitely have gone off by then. But please take it back to the retailer and say, I don't think this is quite right. Would you taste it with me? And hopefully they will taste it and agree with you and give you a refund, and everybody learns by the experience.
What makes sauces thicken? Mainly it's because we add starch to them. There are various types of starch. In Europe we use things like flour, corn flour, arrowroot to thicken our sauces. In other places, Mexico and India, they use things like ground up seeds and nuts to thicken their sauces. Another way of thickening sauces is to use proteins, often from eggs. The main difference between the two types of thickened sauce is that if you make a mistake with a starch-based sauce, you can usually correct it. If you make a mistake with an egg-based sauce, you normally can't correct it. Let's have a look at the starch-based sauce. So I've got some corn flour here, some water. We add some water to the corn flour and make a nice smooth paste. The purpose being to mix the corn flour granules up very thoroughly and very uniformly. We then put that into some hot stock, which is here, and stir it all the time. Now what's going on, there are some crystals in the starch granules. When you heat them up, the little granules of starch can expand and get bigger. Water gets into them, and they can get bigger in size, up to about 20 or 30 times bigger. Then they start to touch one another, and then you end up with a nice thick sauce. So once the temperature is above about 6 degrees centigrade, it very quickly will end up thickening. Here you can see this sauce is thickening up very quickly now. If you make a mistake with a starch-based sauce, because it's a process of crystallization, it's reversible. Just as if you heat ice up and melt it, you can keep on going backwards and forwards. So if we have got lumpy sauce, the first thing to do is to break all the lumps up. You can do that by putting your lumpy sauce into a liquidizer and giving it a short burst. You then pass it through a sieve and put it back in the pan and reheat it, and you will melt all the crystals, you'll swell up all the starch again, and with a bit of luck, you'll end up with a nice smooth sauce. An example of a sauce which can be made either with starch-based or protein-based methods is a custard. A starch-based method is to use custard powder, which contains corn flour, salt and flavourings, and you make the custard by adding sugar and milk and stirring it up and heating it up, just like the sauce we just made. The other type of custard is egg custard with proteins, the egg proteins. You take eggs, separate them,